Well, Senate confirmation hearings are underway for key cabinet positions for the incoming Trump administration. And a new poll from the Associated Press shows Americans have low confidence in a number of key nominees. The poll finds only around 2 in 10 Americans approve of Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Yesterday, Hegseth faced the senators being grilled on accusations of alcohol abuse, sexual misconduct, and mismanagement of funds for 2 veterans organizations which he was let go from. Hegseth has denied all accusations, saying that he's changed, found God, and is ready for the position. Joining us now is the director of political analytics program at Columbia University, Gregory Wawro. Greg, good to have you with us. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. So for the folks at home that are just not totally familiar with the process, give us a little quick rundown how these hearings typically work and who in the Senate takes part.
So hearings for nominations are relatively pre-staged affairs. The nominees do a lot of work prior to the hearings, meeting with senators one-on-one to address any doubts that they might have and try to lock in their support. Senators place a very heavy emphasis on these meetings, and any nominee who doesn't comply can face rougher going in the actual hearings. This includes both those on the Committee of Jurisdiction, in this case the Armed Services Committee for Hegseth, and other senators who are not on the committee. The hearings include all members of the relevant committee, and all senators can ask questions. Those who are not in the party of the president are typically looking for ways to call into question the nominee's fitness. They dig into past statements. They raise scandals that the nominee might be associated with, and generally try to score some political points. Those who are aligned with the president usually provide support and cover. It's very unlikely that there are any surprises in these hearings. Witnesses can be called, but the focus is usually on the nominee's testimony and the senator's questions of the nominee.
I think there was no real surprises necessarily that people didn't know about Hegseth yesterday. But again, we're talking about one of the most powerful positions in the world. You're overseeing 3.5 million employees. You've got a budget of $1 trillion. Now, with that being said, served in the military, all respect for that goes to him. But he's been the host of a weekend news program on a cable network for the last 10 years. Is he the most qualified person for the job? I mean, there was a lot of people that served in the military. It doesn't necessarily make them a great candidate for the Secretary of Defense.
Right. These are political appointees. And so the question of his qualifications is, I'm sure you can always find somebody who's more qualified, but qualifications are only one dimension of the job. Certainly the president wants somebody who's qualified to be in the position, but they also want somebody who's going to support the president's program. And I think what we've seen out of Hegseth is that he will be completely in line with what Donald Trump wants him to do as head of the military.
And you had Joanie Ern, too, as the one Republican senator, really kind of the bigger holdout there. Military service, again, one of her hallmarks. And now she overnight said, you know what, she fully embraces and supports him. Was there something that was done or said during the hearings yesterday that you thought that would put people who were kind of teetering over the edge?
So with Senator Ern in particular, she was concerned about his past comments about women serving in the military and in particular combat roles. And so her questioning focused on those, and his answers seemed to placate her concerns. My sense is that nothing happened in the hearings that are going to lead any Republican on the panel to oppose him. You would only need one Republican to do that. I doubt he'll get any Democratic support, but he seemed to address concerns about his past statements about women in the military, appeared contrite for his past behavior, and he didn't get rattled by any of the questions that he was asked by any senator.
All right, so let's talk about some of the other hearings. You've got Pam Bondi for DOJ today, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Most feel that'll be smooth sailing for Rubio at least. But what about Bondi, Elise Stefanik, some of these other picks?
I don't think the hearings that are coming up will be as contentious as what we've seen with Pete Hegseth. He was arguably the most controversial this week. You mentioned Rubio. I mean, the Senate is still a pretty clubby institution, and they tend to go easier on members of the club. So I expect Rubio will face questions, but they'll probably treat him with kid gloves. I think the temperature will increase for some of the other nominees that you mentioned, especially ones that are coming up like Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. There's certainly likely to bring up, Democrats will bring up past behavior, past statements, and try to pick off some Republicans, if not on the committee, then certainly in the larger Republican caucus to try to defeat those nominations.
Before I let you go, is the approach you put 10 forward? If you can get 8, fantastic. If you get all 10, I mean, that's a huge win. But do you know you're going to get some resistance on some of the picks? So if you put a wild card out there, let's see if it goes.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, there will be some nominees who will pick up some Democratic support. I suspect Marco Rubio will. And then the press release that will follow will be that the candidate had bipartisan support.
All right, Greg, thanks so much. We appreciate you talking with us. Greg Wawro, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.